You know how Star Wars always makes Yoda seem like the ultimate wise old mentor, the guy who could just close his eyes, hum for a second, and figure out the meaning of life? Well, what if I told you that when you actually look at his record as Grand Master, it's less galactic genius and more guy who accidentally left the oven on for 2 decades? I mean, sure, he's got the cool lines and the cryptic riddles, but wisdom isn't just about talking in reverse. It's about actually leading, adapting, and maybe, I don't know, noticing the Sith takeover happening right next to you. Because here's the wild part. Yoda didn't just miss 1 or 2 warning signs, he missed all of them. The Sith were literally running the Republic from the inside, and our little green friend was still out there meditating on rock formations. Meanwhile, the galaxy is falling apart like a bad IKEA chair, and Yoda's solution is to tell Anakin to stop being so emotional. Yeah, because telling a guy with attachment issues to just let go always works out well. And then there's the whole Clone Wars thing. You'd think that a sudden, mysterious, fully armed clone army would raise some eyebrows, right? But nope. Yoda just takes the keys and drives it straight into the biggest galactic conflict in history. No background check, no questions asked. It's like getting a free car from a guy in a dark alley and deciding to take it on a road trip without checking if the brakes work. Spoiler alert, they didn't. But here's where it gets even more insane. Even after everything started going wrong, Yoda still doubled down on the Jedi code like it was the sacred menu at a favorite restaurant. No substitutions, no changes, just the same old teachings that were already falling apart. And when Anakin came to him with his fears, Yoda basically gave him the spiritual equivalent of thoughts and prayers and sent him on his way. Honestly, you can almost hear Palpatine laughing in the background, which brings us to the really messy truth. For all the talk about his wisdom and power, Yoda's leadership is one of the biggest reasons the Jedi Order collapsed. And that's not just me being dramatic vats baked into the story. This wasn't some random twist of fate. This was a leader who failed to adapt when the galaxy changed, and the cost was everything. The Jedi didn't fall in spite of Yoda. They fell because of him. In this video, we're going to peel back the layers of Yoda's so-called wisdom and look at the choices that led to one of the biggest disasters in Star Wars history. We'll break down the mistakes, the missed opportunities, and the moments that proved even the greatest Jedi can get it horribly wrong. And by the end, you might not see Yoda as the flawless sage you grew up with. You might see him for what he really was, a legend whose biggest legacy was failure. From the outside, he seemed unshakable, guiding the Jedi through centuries of peace. But under his watch, a Sith Lord literally took over the Republic, staged a galaxy-wide war, and exterminated the Jedi Order without him realizing it until it was far too late. How does a leader so attuned to the Force miss that? It's fascinating to dig into how Yoda's mistakes weren't just random oversights, but patterns of thinking that made him blind to the biggest dangers. He was so locked into Jedi dogma that he couldn't even imagine a Sith hiding in plain sight. Think about it, Palpatine was in the Senate for years, shaking hands with Yoda, and yet Yoda never once suspected him. Meanwhile, the galaxy's political system was rotting from the inside, and Yoda was still teaching kids how to stack rocks. Even during the Clone Wars, Yoda never questioned whether the Jedi were playing into someone else's game. The clones appeared out of nowhere, ordered under a false identity, and instead of treating it like a massive red flag, Yoda just rolled with it. It's like finding a fully loaded army in your driveway and saying, "Sure, let's fight a war with these guys," without even checking the receipt. And that's what makes this so intriguing. Yoda's failures aren't just tactical. They're rooted in the way he thought, in the way he assumed the galaxy should work, rather than how it actually worked. He was a master of wisdom, but only in a world that played by the Jedi's rules. The moment the galaxy stopped doing that, Yoda was lost. So the question becomes, was Yoda truly wise, or was he just the best at sounding wise until reality caught up? That's what we're going to break apart. One choice, one oversight, and one shocking result at a time. Alright, let's be honest. Watching Yoda's track record as Grandmaster is like watching someone ignore a flashing red alarm because they think it's not the Jedi way to panic. This guy sat at the very top of the Jedi Order, surrounded by resources, information, and the most powerful Force users in the galaxy, and still couldn't spot a Sith Lord pulling the strings from a few feet away. I mean, come on, this is the same Jedi who could sense Luke's emotional state across systems, but couldn't sense the Sith Chancellor in the next room. The prequel trilogy is full of moments where you just want to yell at the screen, like when Yoda agrees to lead the Jedi into a war on behalf of the Republic, without really questioning why it happened in the first place, or when he calmly accepts the clone army as a gift from the Force, as if giant military forces just appear without shady strings attached. It's the kind of thinking that makes you wonder if the Jedi Temple had a no critical thinking before noon policy. The weight of Yoda's failure really hits when you think about what it meant for the galaxy. The Jedi weren't just an ancient order, they were a symbol of stability, hope, and protection. and under Yoda's leadership, that symbol burned to ash. We watched friends, mentors, and even children cut down in the blink of an eye because the Jedi were too distracted to see the danger right in front of them. Order 66 wasn't just a military operation. It was the execution of an entire culture. Decades of tradition, training, and knowledge erased in hours. All those younglings in the temple, trusting that their masters could protect them, had no idea their fate was already sealed. It's impossible not to feel the crushing sorrow of that moment, knowing it was avoidable. And for Yoda personally, the tragedy wasn't just losing the Order, it was realizing that every decision he'd made leading up to it had brought them closer to that point. Imagine sitting alone on Dagobah, knowing you had centuries to prepare for the Sith's return, and when they finally came, you failed. That's not just defeat, that's a lifetime of purpose, collapsing into regret. You can see it in his eyes during those final prequel scenes. The weight of the fallen Jedi, the Republic turned Empire, and the friends lost along the way. Even in his later years with Luke, that sadness never fully lifts. It's the quiet heaviness of someone who knows their mistakes cost the galaxy more than they can ever repay. It's a reminder that for all of Yoda's teachings about letting go, some burdens are too heavy to release. But here's where things get complicated, because despite all his failings, Yoda is still one of the most fascinating characters in Star Wars. The sheer scale of his life is almost unimaginable. Centuries of history, wars, peace treaties, and cultural shifts saw witnessed firsthand. That kind of perspective isn't something you can just dismiss, even if the choices made with it weren't perfect. There's also the undeniable awe of watching Yoda in his element. From his duel with Count Dooku to his confrontation with Palpatine, you see glimpses of why he inspired so much respect. His mastery of the Force, his agility, despite his size, and his ability to hold his own against the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, that's the stuff of legend. For all the damage done under Yoda's watch, there's still something hopeful in his story, because failure, as much as it hurts, can be a teacher. And Yoda, by the time we see him in the original trilogy, seems to have learned from his... He doesn't try to recreate the old Jedi Order, he trains Luke to be something different, something freer from the chains of tradition. That choice is huge. By guiding Luke away from the rigid dogma that doomed the Jedi before, Yoda gives the galaxy a chance to have protectors who can adapt. It's a recognition that sometimes the best way to honor a legacy is to change it. Even his acceptance of his own end feels like growth. There's no running from the truth, no denial of the mistakes made. Instead, Yoda meets it with a quiet acceptance, passing the torch to someone who might do better. That kind of humility was missing in his earlier years, and it makes his final lessons all the more meaningful. And for us watching, that's inspiring. Because if a 900-year-old Jedi Master can admit he was wrong and choose to try again in a new way, then maybe there's hope for any of us to change course before it's too late. In that way, Yoda's failures don't just define his legacy, they also light the path for those who follow. In the end, Yoda's story is one of the great tragedies of Star Wars. A leader who was both revered and flawed, whose wisdom couldn't save him from the blind spots of his own beliefs. His tenure as Grand Master didn't end in victory, or even honorable retirement. It ended with the Jedi scattered, the Sith triumphant, and the Republic in ruins. The tragedy is that Yoda did see the danger eventually, but by then, it was too late. His duel with Sidious wasn't just a fight, it was the physical embodiment of decades of missed opportunities crashing down. And when he failed to defeat the Emperor, it sealed the fate of the galaxy for a generation. But within that loss is also a strange kind of resolution. Yoda lived long enough to pass his knowledge on, to try and ensure that the mistakes of the past wouldn't be repeated. His role in shaping Luke may not have redeemed his leadership failures, but it gave the galaxy a fighting chance. In the final moments of his life, there's a sense of peace. The war is no longer his to fight, and the burden of fixing what he broke rests on younger shoulders. It's not the ending he would have wanted, but it's the one his choices led to. And that's why Yoda's story matters, because it shows that even the greatest heroes can fail, and that those failures can ripple through history just as much as their victories. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.